Hello all, Magna FPL back for my second ever video. Just want to say thank you for the response to the first one. It was better than I could have expected. It's been up, it's about to be 24 hours now, and it's on like 450 views. So again, thank you. But moving on, as FPL is not released yet, I thought I might as well look at the players coming into the Premier League or moving around the Premier League and see if they could be good FPL assets. And as you can see over here, I've got my boy Erling Harland. He's not my boy, I lied. But I do have Erling Harland over here. Not like him himself, it's a picture of him with his stats, but still. Now Erling Harland, as you can see here, it's stupid. Has 1.05 expected goals and assists per 90 for last season. And it's like, since his time at Dortmund, he has averaged around 1 goal and assist per 90. Like, that is ridiculous. And they're just expected stats. He normally overperforms expected goals and assists. Now, saying that is important, expected goals, if you like continuously overperform that, it shows you are a good finisher. Like, Human Son always overperforms his XG. Yeah, no, but it's clear. Haaland, I think when he's good and on the field, he's just going to cook. Now, obviously, you have the issue of he had a lot of like little injuries last year, which isn't really promising. The fact that it was like a lot of little injuries instead of just like one fairly big injury. Because to consistently be getting these little injuries is a bit of a worry. But genuinely, I see Haaland like a bit of an Aguero when he was at City. When he's fit and playing, he will just score goals and goals. So I think coming in at probably, we'd say 12, 12.5. Haaland is one that I think all of us will own at some point this season. Even if you don't start off with him, you're going to have him. Okay, so moving on to the next man. Darwin Nunez. I'm sure when I make the graphic for this, I'll take his minutes and its XG and I'll figure out what it is per 90. But right now I'm just working with per match, as that's what this website has it as. So I assume them saying per match means it's not per 90. But I am the numbers will be within like 0.03, I imagine. I have just thrown that out there. But his expected goals per match is 0.7 and his expected assists are 0.23, adding up to 0.93. Now, he overperformed that XG this year, but last year he did underperform his XG, so I'd like to hazard a guess that he will just be an average finisher, like compared to XG, because if you underperform one year then overperform the next, that probably suggests you got unlucky one year and lucky the next, and that your average is probably in between the two, which would be just like meeting XG. That said, his expected assists at 0.23 for the season just gone is quite good, and the year before that they were at 0.31, because the season before the one just gone, he actually had more assists than goals. So even though I think Darwin Nunez, anyone who's seen him play a decent amount, can agree what he's best at is like just physically being immense. He's big, he's strong, he's quick. And what someone like him will be elite at is playing on the transition. Like a guy with his physical attributes, because he's not the most gifted, but those physical attributes, if you get the ball and you move up the pitch quickly, he will kill defences. But that's not really a lot of what Liverpool do, because they're a very ball dominant side. Obviously when they win back the ball, they do try and attack quickly. But when you're playing like, let's say, I don't know, a promoted club, Bournemouth or a Nottingham Forest or a Fulham, and they're they're getting men behind the ball, that opportunity to break really quickly isn't there. But I mean, even then, when you're not getting to use them on the counter in that transition, you still have a really big physical striker who's getting the service from Trent, Robbo, like Salah gets a lot of assists, like he's going to have creativity around him, so I don't think he'll struggle for goals if they're not counter-attacking. But all that said, Darwin Nunez as like an FPL asset probably isn't the one, at least offer it, because two of your Liverpool slots are Trent and Salah, unless Robbo comes in like a mil cheaper than Trent, then maybe you're considering that. So those are two of your Liverpool slots gone. And there are also two premium players. And I imagine Darwin Nunez will come in probably around 10 million. Probably maybe even a bit more if they're going to be cautious with it. And I just think, especially beginning of the season, for a premium forward, you will probably prefer Kane or Harland. And I don't think, at least me personally, I wouldn't go 2 premium forwards. I'd always go 1 premium forward and then 1 premium midfielder. And you could be one of these people who try and get 3 premiums in, but it's very tough. This is all assuming he is like 10 million plus. If he came in cheaper than that, then maybe we're talking. I think with the price we can expect for Darwin Nunez, it's just not going to be worth it because of other options. And also, he's probably a minutes risk when he first comes in, because Jota played up front for a lot of that early stages in last season. And I mean, him just coming in, it's a new system. He might like be slowly oozed into the team. That's a thing I didn't actually mention really with Harland. I think with the 5 subs rule, his injury history, his minutes could definitely be managed. Although that said, Pep also will never make subs. Obviously that's a bit extreme, but there's a lot of occasions where Man City play and they just make 1 sub or none. Anyway, moving on to the next player, Fabio Vieira. Now Fabio Vieira will probably come in as like a fairly budget midfielder, 5.5, maybe 6 million. And if he's guaranteed minutes in that Arsenal midfield, maybe is a punt, especially with their early fixtures. But I'll be honest, looking at his underlying numbers, he's overperformed them massively. He got 14 assists last year, but he only had 5.69 expected assists. And then for goals, he had 3.69 expected goals, scored 6. That's an overperformance where you could see that happening again. But 14 assists from an expected 5.69 is so unlikely to be recreated. Now, something I do think is a big thing is looking at pre-season, whether he's taking set pieces. I don't know if he's a set piece taker. Looking at where he's playing. And basically, if you are looking at Fabio Vieira, in pre-season, I'd look at him and Odegaard. I know Odegaard is on most set pieces and is a pretty similar option. Now, all that said, his underlying numbers are actually pretty good per 90. As much as I'm saying he's massively overperformed them, his per 90 stats are pretty good. Granted, I don't think he's played a lot of football. Yeah, actually here. He's had 1,400 minutes, and with all the sub appearances he had, he averaged 54 minutes a match. So as a guy who's not played a lot of football, it's like Fabio Vieira is an interesting one. So he has decent underlying numbers, but he massively overperformed them in a worse league. I mean, the Portuguese league though, it is a worse league, but the players coming out of it, at least fairly recently, have been to a very high level. So it's hard to know. What I'd say with Fabio Vieira, look in pre-season where he's playing, because in pre-season we can't really gauge how many minutes, what the best 11 is, but where he is playing in pre-season will probably be his position when he does start. Also with Fabio Vieira, he's a guy who's not played a lot of football, so there's the possibility of his minutes being managed. I don't know. Fabio Vieira's one that I'm not going to be jumping on straight away. Next up, Aguard. I'm very unsure on how to say that name. I've not heard it said out loud before. He's a defender coming into West Ham. I'll be honest, I don't think we're really going to be considering him. His threat off set pieces was fairly minimal. I think the only reason we'd want to get him in is if he was the cheapest way into that West Ham defence. And I imagine he's probably going to be the same price as a Southampton. Obviously, we expect him to probably maybe take, Craig Dawson's place. I'd imagine that's who he'd come in for, not Zuma. Despite all the controversy, I think they spent 40 million on Zuma a year ago. He is seen as the first choice centre-back there. And then I think Cresswell being on set pieces will be 0.5 above all of them. But yeah, just not a guy that interests me if he's the same price as Southampton, which I feel he might be. But I mean, he's coming into a fairly good defence, and if he was the cheapest way into that defence, I'm all over him. Hey, by the way, I did mention it earlier, this is my second ever video on the channel, so if you're enjoying what you see right now and you want to be one of the first few to subscribe, be sure to do so. Also like the video. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the video. Now moving on, I'm going to go through the rest of these signings a lot quicker, just because for an FPL context, they don't like mean as much. Starting off, Gavin Bazunu will come in a cheap 4.5 million keeper, but as far as I understand it, he is battling for the number 1 shirt. But a guy who had a very good year at Portsmouth, if he was to come in, maybe we're looking at him. I'm not sure. For me personally, there's other 4.5s I prefer in David Raya, Sanchez, if they were to be 4.5. But I think for me, he's going to come in, be a cheap keeper that at least initially, maybe he picks up a lot of save points, a lot of bonus points. He's really good. And Southampton's defence in underlying numbers takes a step up. But for now, I'm not going to go for him. Next up, we got Matt Targett, who was a loan last year. He's now officially signed. Just one where I imagine he's probably going to be joint cheapest way into the Newcastle defence, which might be an improved one. So that's quite interesting. He is about an expected 0.1 goal involvements per 90. I think it's ever so slightly above that. I imagine he has more expected goal involvements than Fabian Schär, Dan Burn, and not Kieran Trippier, but it'll be cheaper than Kieran Trippier. Also, those two probably aren't going to be the starting 2 centre-backs. I think they're looking to bring someone in. But Matt Targett is probably the starting left-back, as they did spend about, 15 million on him. Next up, we have Brendan Aaronson. Now, maybe, if this was like a year ago, and Leeds were coming off that season, we're looking at him more, but I think for me, he doesn't have a lot of goal contributions last year. I think he'll probably come in at 5.5. And I'll just prefer, if I want in on that Leeds attack, Bamford and Raphinha. I wouldn't cut the cost to go to Brendan Aaronson. So I don't think he's a serious option next year. Maybe, I could be wrong here. But from his numbers at Salzburg, if he's used in a similar role, puts up similar numbers, I don't think he's someone to consider. Next up, moving on, Armel Balakutchap, signing for Southampton from the Bundesliga. He's around, it says here 8.6 million. And it's again another, Southampton are going to have playing 4.5 million defenders. And then their fullbacks will probably be 5 in Kyle Walker-Peters and Livramento. So I think it's another one where really for FPL, we don't have to consider him massively. Next up, we have Nick Pope, who, could be a guy he's going into a better defence. He's historically got a lot of save points and a lot of bonus points. That said, at Burnley you face a lot of low value shots because of their deep block. Burnley were very happy to give shots away from 30 yards out, which would kind of boost his save numbers. But I think the issue for me is that he probably comes in at 5.5 million because that's what he was at Burnley last year. And I think FPL would just look at him coming into a better defence and just price him at the same. At 5 million, for me, I don't start with him at 5 million. And me personally, I think he's an option at that price. But for me, he'd have to come to 4.5 for me to get him. And there's just not a way he comes from 5.5 and then goes into a better team and comes down significantly in price. I just can't see it. So for me, I don't think I'm going to be getting Nick Pope. Next up, Ryan Fredericks moving to Bournemouth. He's one where I don't think we're going to be considering him. One, because as a Bournemouth fan myself, I don't think our defence was good for the Championship. Very good for the Championship. But Premier League, big step up. Promoted clubs struggle. Also, was it Jordan Zamora, assuming he's starting left back going into next year, is a far more attacking option. And then also Ryan Fredericks, he's not a guaranteed starter with Adam Smith there, so I think he's not really a serious option. Next up, Calvin Ramsey. He's a youngster who came in from Aberdeen, and I think he's going to be very similar to just Tsimikas on the other side, which is probably when Trent's not fit, which is so rare, he plays. That's maybe because Tsimikas did have a year to integrate, so maybe they'd still prefer Joe Gomez if he's still there as a backup right back. Maybe Nico Williams if he doesn't get sold to Fulham. Or I think Nottingham Forest are actually linked to him. And there's a good chance that Nico Williams currently is a Welsh international, good year in the Championship, or good half a year. He would be the starting right back. Or not start, he'd be the backup right back. I don't think Nico Williams is replacing Trent. Next up, Tottenham signed Basuma for 25 million. This just makes him a worse option for FPL. He's still going to be a defensive mid, but now the issue with him is he's probably more of a minutes risk, and he takes up a Tottenham spot, which is more valuable. There were times last year when I tripled up on, like Tottenham. Now listen, I don't think tripling up on Tottenham saying I'm looking to do from the off, but there's like a very high chance you'd have 2 Tottenham assets in your team normally. So I think Basuma, we're just going to look at other 4.5 mids now. Mark Rocker going to Leeds. It's one where I don't think we're really considering it. At Espanyol, he was a very progressive passer, which for those who don't know, it means he'd play a lot of passes which got the team up the pitch. And I don't know how many yards it is, but for it to be a progressive pass, you have to play the ball so many yards. And there has to be so many yards forward. You can't just play like a switch. But progressive passes don't really translate into anything in terms of FPL. So probably not really an actual FPL option. Marquinhos from Sao Paulo. Again, one I doubt we're going to be considering. He's come in for like a minimal fee, and he's a very talented footballer. He's only 19 years old, but I think there's not a chance he's guaranteed minutes, therefore he's not a good FPL option. Now Christensen is a very progressive right back, has a lot of goal contributions for a right back, but that's in the Austrian league, playing in such a dominant side. So I think he got over 10 goal contributions this year. But I mean, I think we all know, like, going from a very dominant side in the Austrian league, who has like all the ball, takes so many shots, into Leeds, who probably will at best, a good season for Leeds this year is mid-table. His goal involvements are going to drop significantly. That said, he's probably still going to be good for a return. So if he was the same price as the rest of the defence, and that Leeds defence looks better this year, he's probably the one I'd go for, assuming he's nailed ahead of Luke Ayling. But I just don't know. I don't know if it translates. I don't know if he's guaranteed minutes. But he is someone to keep your eye on, just because of those goal involvements. Moving on to Diego Carlos, who signed for Villa. I mean, he's a guy who's guaranteed minutes. I mean, he's a good defender with decent, like, threat off set pieces. But I mean, Matty Cash and Luca Dean are 2 quite progressive fullbacks. And then I know Konsa's out long term, so would it be him and Mings? I think it's him and Mings starting centre backs. And then you have Mings, who's like, I know in terms of like actual real life football, there's question marks over him, but I mean, he does have pretty good like goal threat. So I don't know. I'd probably just prefer one of the fullbacks if I wanted in on the Villa defence. But I mean, a guy coming in playing for a decent defence who's probably going to be nailed. I like it. Moving on, Boubacar Kamara, joining on a free from Marseille. I mean, this could be our new budget mid. A guy who comes in for 4.5 million and puts up like a lot of minutes. Gets you 2 points every week. But outside of that, for FPL, he's not like an actual option. And then finally, Philippe Coutinho. Philippe Coutinho was a good FPL asset at times last year. Because obviously, they're just signing him permanently after a loan. I think he put up about 0.4 expected goal involvements per 90. And the thing is, it's just getting in on like the Villa attack. Let's say when they have like a good fixture run or it's looking really good. At least last year he was the only guy who you could like rely on playing a lot of minutes, because Ings and Watkins have to worry about each other. Buendia didn't really have the year we would have wanted. Leon Bailey, same there. Then I'm trying to think. I think that's all for that Villa attack, at least what you'd expect to be starters. So I just think Coutinho, even though his expected goal involvements per 90 weren't immense, so a guy who'll probably be one of those mid-price mids at around the 7 to 8 million mark, and I think we should all have an eye on. Okay, so that is it for this video. Again, thank you for the support on the first video, which as I upload this, as I said previous, is on like 450 views in under 24 hours, and as well as that, thank you for watching this video.